That's something to be happy about, but no matter how I think about it, I can't help but feel like it's not my achievement. That's not true. Without Master, I would still be imprisoned. No. That's definitely a lie, right? I'm disappointed. I have never lied to my master, not even once in the past. Was that so? I feel like I have a lot of memories of being deceived. It's just your imagination. Really? Well, okay. Well, that's fine. I felt like I would lose if I thought too deeply about it, and then I remembered that there was something more important that I needed to do. It's Benimaru. I had done everything I could and left the rest to Ramaris. However, it occurred to him that Seal might be able to deal with the situation more appropriately. I used instantaneous movement, teleportation to move next to Benimaru. Rimuru, why are you here? No, I was worried about Benimaru. Benimaru-chan's magic core has begun to move and is stable, but it's good that he hasn't awakened yet. It seems that there is no doubt that he is safe, so I am relieved. Just as I was feeling relieved, I felt a presence behind me. Hey, you seem pretty relaxed. It's Guy. It looks like he's imitating me and using teleportation, but it seems like he can use it just as easily. I don't have the luxury of time. I want to wake up Benimaru while I can. Don't get in the way, I thought to myself as I replied. And yet, Guy got even more involved. So, is it okay to leave Ivalage alone? That's what I should have said. Guy, wouldn't it have been better if you had stopped Ivarage instead of just watching? If he was going to push all this trouble onto me, he should have tried his best too. With that in mind, I complained lightly, but he replied in a shocked tone. Shut up. If I had drawn my sword halfway through, it would have been even more dangerous. If that had happened, would you have taken responsibility for it? No, I won't. So, the correct answer would be this. In that case, there's nothing I can do about it. It can't be helped. Guy and I nodded to each other. It's a bit of a problem, because they seem to get along surprisingly well. That aside, wait a moment. After I declined, I had Seal examine Benimaru. This is an excellent move. Indeed, the procedure appears perfect. Thanks to Ramaris, the demon core that served as his heart was beating powerfully. Then why doesn't Benimaru wake up? Master has poured a little too much power into Benimaru, and it seems his body structure is changing to get used to it. Oh, I see. Was it my fault? I realized after it was pointed out, but even Benimaru's race seems to have changed. He was a demon, Kai god, and a high-ranking holy demonic spirit flame. N's spirit, Ray demon Kai, but he had become a top-ranking holy demonic spirit flame and dragon Ryu demon Kai. It wasn't a mistake, so I think it's okay. I quietly looked away and pretended I didn't see it. Everyone can encounter unexpected situations. If Seal had been there, this wouldn't have happened. After all, this was the first time I was performing the treatment on my own, so I had no choice but to accept it as it was. This may have been due to unnecessary ingenuity, but since the causal relationship could not be proven, it should have been ignored. Changing races isn't a big deal, and Benimaru is safe, so I think that's fine. That's how I changed my mindset. So, do you want me to wake you up? Yes, I'd appreciate it. The moment he wished that, Benimaru woke up. It was so surprisingly natural that I was more stunned than pleased. Rimuru-sama. Oh yeah, I'm glad you're safe. That was my line, but wait, why am I okay? Well, that's fine. Well, I suppose so. As soon as he said that, Benimaru suddenly stood up. I feel so good. I guess so. Because the species has changed, and I think the amount of magic essence and energy has increased to a surprising degree. But since Guy is next to me, I don't say anything unnecessary. I zipped my mouth and briefly explained my business. Well then, there's someone causing trouble over there, could you join them? I'm worried that Shin and Karara might be doing something reckless. Leave it to me. Right now, I feel like I won't lose no matter who I'm up against. Oh, that's reliable, or so I thought. Oh, my sword broke. Benimaru muttered, with a look of regret on his face. However, he said, oh well, it can't be helped, and looked like he was about to jump out, so I quickly stopped him. Hey, Benimaru-kun. What do you want? I don't know, it's not that. I never intended to order you to commit suicide, to face a strong enemy without weapon. I'll find a replacement weapon, so please wait a moment. It's good to have it. I remembered that I had stored some spare weapons in the imaginary space. I was going to take them out and give them to Benimaru, but Ramiris took out a wand first. It was something I had been entrusted with by Lord Veldonava, but it had been stored away in the treasure vault. I couldn't retrieve it unless I was in this form, so I had completely forgotten about it. I see. As for its name, I'm pretty sure it was Prosperity Alta. But what about a cane? Just as I was thinking that, the moment Benimaru picked it up, it transformed into a long sword. Wow, this is amazing, Benimaru said in surprise. It seemed that the weapons created by Veldonava could take any shape there. Owner desired. I felt like I'd lost, and it was a bit frustrating. And what's more, Benimaru's broken sword, Crimson Gu Ren, crumbled into pieces, but strangely, only a crimson orb the size of a marble remained. A small hole appeared at the base of the blade of Prosperity Alta, as if to accept this, and it fit perfectly into it. Oh, it's as if Kurenai Guren Ren has been reborn. The appearance is the same, but the power is on a completely different level. I guess so. Because no matter how you look at it, it's a Genesis class. Ramiris had hidden something incredible, but it can't be helped if she had forgotten about it. In the first place, it seems that she had been entrusted with it for over 2,000 years, and it was probably a story from before her reincarnation that Ramiris had been repeating over and over again. Even so, Prosperity Alta is it. Could it be that the labyrinth produced wealth because Ramiris had this? Or is it just a coincidence? It seems that game casings, body, and other things had also washed up in Ramiris's labyrinth, so perhaps they had unexpectedly benefited from the blessings of Prosperity Alta. Either way, I wanted to investigate, so I thought I would try researching it with Kurobi once this battle was over. Well then, I'll have Kurobi prepare a new sword for me once this battle is over. But for now, I'll just borrow this one. I will be grateful to borrow it, Lady Ramiris. It's fine, don't worry about it. By relying on Ramiris, I was able to prepare a weapon for Benimaru. Now there are no worries. Well then, I'm counting on you, Benimaru. I understand. No matter what kind of enemy it is, I'll defeat it. Benimaru laughed fearlessly. In that case, I would like to leave it to him to deal with Veldonava and Ivalage, but that would be too much for Benimaru, who has just been revived. I also turned my attention to Zijin, who was protecting Benimaru. Zijin, please help out too. My will. Zijin replied happily. They seem to be doing their best over there too, and with Benimaru and Zijin joining the reinforcements, we should be able to do something. With this conviction, I saw off Benimaru and Zijin. Facing Diablo, Jahil was getting anxious. This was because he was being overwhelmed by Diablo, who to his senses was supposed to be inferior to him. Damn it, what's going on? I've obtained such a brutal and powerful power. None of Jahil's attacks worked on Diablo. Even attacks infused with Darkness Multiplication Devourer, Devastator Virus, were nullified by Diablo's deployed nothingness to protect himself. At this rate, it would be impossible to devour Diablo and convert it into power. So I changed my target to the others, but to my frustration and anger, it didn't look like the people there would be so easy to kill. The true value of ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Evil Dragon King, Azzy Dehaka, is that it absorbs the power of the target it devours. It doesn't matter if it's a corpse, but if it uses the devoured materials and utilizes organic domination and mass production of replication, it is even possible to create a large number of powerful, evil dragon beasts. Vega was mentally immature and did not understand the power of his authority. Jahil is different. He can even make full use of the power of ability absorption. From his ultimate ability, ultimate skill, Evil Dragon King Azzy Dehaka, and steal the energy of his enemies. And yet, he was unable to take energy from those present. Yuki used teleportation to escape, and not only Diablo but also Tensura. Ultima and Carrera were also able to escape by making full use of nothingness. "Don't mess with me," Jahil said angrily. He thought he could aim at Shin while she was unconscious, but Rumina's had put up an impenetrable defense, so he thought he'd just eliminate Rumina's, but Tensura and the other three got in the way. While all this was going on, Diablo cornered him, and he had no choice but to decide that it would be better to change his target to another prey. However, this is also limited. There are mountains of cryptid corpses on the battlefield, but there's no real point in eating them. Jahil had already taken control of the two giants, Swim and Kakashi, but even so, he was no match for Diablo. If they could obtain the materials, they could create an evil dragon beast, but in the suspended world, that would be meaningless. Unfortunately, it was not possible to grant the evil dragon beast the power to move around in suspended time. There's no doubt that it was a powerful power, but it didn't have the decisive power to overturn the current situation. Jahil was indignant, but he was pondering whether there was a way to escape this predicament. Then, I spotted some people having a relaxed conversation a short distance away. Naturally, this was Feldway and the others trying to persuade Cornu. The persuasion was half complete. In fact, it even seemed like a relaxed conversation was about to begin. For Jahil, it was a situation he could not ignore. Everyone was strong. If he ate them, there was a high possibility that he would gain new powers, and he hoped that this would be a way to break out of this situation. Escaping from Diablo would be extremely difficult, but Jahil thought this was the time to muster his strength. Therefore, he created an evil dragon beast that resembled himself in front of him and turned his back on it to deceive Diablo. Instead of running away, Jahil's target was Cornu. He believed that if he absorbed the power of Habataki that Cornu possessed, he would become perfect. However, that wish does not come true. TCH, I thought so. Behind me, I heard Diablo mutter in annoyance. Jahil becomes suspicious when they do not follow him, but the reason for this is revealed when a being appears before him. That was Zijin. Zijin's fist sent Jahil flying. With just that, Jahil lost a lot of energy. Damn, what happened? Who could have done this to me, the sorcerer? Emperor. And I'm confused. Jahil then regained his balance, but that was all he could do. Benimaru stood in front of Jahil. "Leave this guy to me." Hearing this, Diablo shrugged his shoulders. I knew it would turn out like this." "Very well." Zijin simply nodded, folded his arms and prepared to watch. From the start, Rimuru had ordered him to help Benimaru, so he thought he would just take action if something happened. It might be a different story with someone else, but there's no need to intervene. When it comes to Benimaru, Diablo groaned as he looked at Benimaru. Benimaru Dono has also been bestowed with Rimuru-sama's power and has finally reached the pinnacle of evolution. Is that so? That's why you feel so good. In truth, Benimaru had grown significantly in strength since coming back to life. After nearly dying, or rather actually dying. Moreover, Rimuru's blood slime cells flowed through his body. This absorbed an incredible amount of magical energy, greatly strengthening Benimaru's body. As a result, they reached the highest level of holy demonic spirits flame, N. Dragon Ryu Onikai, which are beings that should be called sub-dragon species. Its existence value easily exceeded 40 million, and it was even recognized as its master by the Prosperity Alta that it had borrowed from Ramiris. Therefore, the current Benimaru had the power of Prosperity Alta added to his power and possessed a hidden existence value close to 100 million. Diablo had seen through it accurately. My goodness, so Rimuru-sama wants to use this opportunity to give Benimaru Dono some experience. In that case, I guess my turn won't come around anymore. Realizing this, although he felt disappointed that he could not deliver the final blow to Jahil with his own hands, he accepted that this was also Rimuru's wish. However, there was one person who was not convinced. It's Cornu. As expected, there was murderous intent directed at him, so there was no way he wouldn't notice Jahil's approach. What's this, you little bug? You're directing murderous intent at me, are you? Getting too cocky, because you've just gained a little bit of power. Cornu made a bold statement to Jahil. In terms of ability, Jahil is currently far superior. However, Cornu's arrogance had grown since he had become one with Habataki. That's what's so bad about Cornu. Another negative point was that Feldway and the others had tried to persuade him to calm down, but he was unable to make use of that. Cornu had completely merged with Habataki, and his appearance had also changed. The wings growing on his back were those of a Habataki, and among the fallen angel's wings, the only pair radiated a golden-crimson glow, making him look quite handsome. And what supported Cornu's confidence was his newly acquired power of teleportation. With this, he could escape from any situation. It was essential to assume that the opponent could not use teleportation. But if the opponent started chasing after him, then Cornu could just think of his next countermeasure at that point. That was Cornu's simple thinking. In a sense, it is not wrong to say that overthinking is not good. And in this case, Jahil couldn't use teleportation. To begin with, there were less than 10 people who could truly use teleportation, so Cornu's idea made sense. However, it is a huge inconvenience for those who are caught up in it. Tell him, Feldway, Zalario Obra, you guys too. Tell that idiot who tried to kill me that I'm important, that I'm a valuable comrade. Okay, so shut up, Feldway said, swallowing the words that were on the tip of his tongue. Without even noticing Feldway's feelings, Cornu redirected his anger and was about to complain further when, anyway, what's with those other guys? What's with Rimu? At that moment, Feldway snatched Cornu's consciousness. It can be said that this was a truly correct assessment of the situation. Zalario and Obra have no objections. If he had been even slightly slower in his decision, Diablo would have had his eye on him. If that had happened, he would have inevitably been dragged into it, which would have been incredibly troublesome and potentially dangerous. It was only natural that the two would support Feldway. Moreover, Zijin was also there. With Diablo and Zijin glaring at them, it would have been impossible for the three of them to protect Cornu. Cornu should have been more grateful to Feldway. Benimaru ends up fighting Jahil, but the energy gap between them is still large. Even to Benimaru right now, Jahil had more than twice the presence. However, there were no problems. Benimaru was confident that he would win. There are several reasons for this, but the main one is that he was not afraid of Jahil. An enemy that Benimaru isn't afraid of is not strong. So, who are you? Before I die, I'll at least ask your name. Benimaru spoke up. For Benimaru, this was his first time meeting Jahil. There was a presence mixed in, and although I felt like I had seen it before, I couldn't remember what it was. That can't be helped. Jahil is now like a different person from the one he was just a few days ago. He's a mixture of Kakashi and Swim plus Vega. Vega had also been devoured by Xeranis, so he had become a monster. These combined to form the ultimate life form, but Benimaru was not aware of this. Jahil was indignant at Benimaru's attitude. Don't underestimate me, brat. I am the great sorcerer Emperor Jahil. I am the one who will slay God and reign as the new creator god, and there is no one else but me. At the same time as he screamed, Jahil also cooled his head. The current situation is extremely bad. Jahil is not so stupid as to not realize this. The way out would be to eat Benimaru, who had come out alone, and take his weapon. That is undoubtedly a sacred artifact created by God. It would be a waste for a fool like that, so I must make good use of it. Jahil made that decision. On the surface, Jahil appeared angry and out of his mind, but deep down he was calm and plotting a path to victory. On the other hand, Diablo and Zijin were irritated after hearing Jahil's cry. Fool, how disrespectful. How disrespectful, how unpleasant. It seems that the new creator god has angered both of them. The two of them believe without a doubt that Rimuru is the only god, and that is why they cannot forgive Jahil's words. Benimaru wasn't that fanatical, so he was a little taken aback by the two's reactions rather than Jahil's words. Okay, calm down. And so, Benimaru tried to appease the two of them. Then, focus your attention on Jahil and talk to him. Ah, it's you. I was indebted to you at the sacred tree, so I'd like to thank you properly. Only after he was introduced did Benimaru realize that the enemy before him was Jahil. And so, once the true identity of the enemy became clear, he was reminded of the fate that had occurred at the sacred tree. For Benimaru, it was a difficult decision. To be forced into a passive battle, concentrating on defense. Since they had achieved their objectives both strategically and tactically, it was effectively a victory, but from Benimaru's perspective, it was not a complete victory. After all, only by defeating the opponent and eradicating the root of the problem can one be proud of victory. That was Benimaru's opinion and true feelings, so this encounter was something he couldn't have hoped for. This is the line, Jahil shouted, launching a quick attack on Benimaru. Not only will it be difficult to defeat Diablo, but he sensed something unusual about the newly arrived Zijin. Right now it was just Benimaru, but if these two joined in, Jahil's chances of winning would drop significantly. He had to defeat Benimaru before that happened. Jahil had also felt something strange about Benimaru, but he decided that it was probably due to the sword he possessed. He set aside his doubts and jumped at the opportunity he had found with all his might. Jahil's fists burned. Since flames do not spread through the air, it is not accurate to say that they were burning. However, Jahil's fists were extremely hot and glowed bright red. It was reminiscent of a raging flame. He then rushed towards Benimaru. He threw a series of punches, which split into tentacles and rained down on Benimaru. However, Benimaru remains unfazed. Quickly step forward with your left foot and slide forward across the ground. The tentacles should have touched Benimaru, but instead slipped through. A rain of fists continued to rain down, but none of them managed to touch Benimaru, instead piercing the air. Why, you bastard, what did you do? Ultimate ability, ultimate skill. King of Heat Flames Amaterasu. Secret Sunyo Flamen. This is the secret to combining offense and defense, and I will teach you its true value with your own body. As a final farewell parting gift, you see. Benimaru's body was flickering like a rising heat haze. Although he has a physical body, he cannot be touched. Benimaru is there even though he cannot be touched. Jahil unleashed countless tentacles that turned into sources of intense heat that instantly evaporated anyone they touched and attacked Benimaru, but it was all in vain. In the first place, ultra-high heat attacks don't work on Benimaru. Hazy dim black dark flame and Japanese symbol 100 Hyabloom Brightry. Chaos ran. Benimaru slashed at Jahil. Jahil was slashed to pieces with countless slashes, turning him into dust in an instant. Black flames clung to the fragments of Jahil's cells. They were flames transformed. From the nothingness, that burns everything to ashes. Jahil's ultra-high temperature tentacles, covered in dark multiplication devourer. Devastator virus, were an extremely dangerous attack, but Benimaru's hazy black flame was even more dangerous. It cannot be touched, cannot be extinguished, and will not disappear until it has burned everything to ashes. And this time, Jahil was engulfed in the flames and burned in unimaginable pain. The fact that even a single cell had a will of its own proved to be a disaster, and he was forced to experience, until his final moment, the struggle between the regenerating cells and the hazy black flames that tried to burn them up. It ended surprisingly easily. Benimaru laughed, saying that they were a good match. That's impressive, Benimaru Dono. Oh dear, it seems I won't have a chance to play after all. Diablo looked disappointed, as Zijin praised him wholeheartedly. Benimaru gave a wry smile. Diablo, you're rampaging as much as you want, right? Lately I've been doing nothing but commanding. Let me fight with all my might every once in a while. Of course, I understand. It seems to have adapted to your body without any problems, and I think it was a worthwhile battle for me to concede. Diablo, who answered like that, also thought that leaving it to Benimaru was the right decision. Because they were friendly rivals, he was both happy and frustrated by Benimaru's growth. Benimaru, Diablo, and Zijin, these three men competed for the title of strongest among Rimyaru's subordinates. This relationship would continue forever. Seeing Benimaru and the others like that, some people sighed. Oh my, did you say Benimaru? With your brother's sword in your hands, you'll be able to fight me on equal terms. Velgrind lamented as she brushed her blue hair back. He is half humble and half serious. Benimaru's growth was abnormal, and he had become half dragon-like. Velgrind suspected that Rimyaru had done something, and she seriously considered what would happen if she were to fight Benimaru in earnest. It was a troubling question. You might win, or you might lose. In other words, the conclusion was that the two were roughly evenly matched. If Benimaru had not obtained Prosperity Alta, Velgrind would have won. There was no doubt about that, but it was a shock to Velgrind that her strength could be matched if she had a weapon. Huff, you don't need to stay like that. That's because, Groon, your sword is me. Rudra was naturally flirting with the woman he loved, but his voice was clearly audible even to his host, Masayuki. Perhaps it was because Rudra had manifested himself, but he was able to properly perceive the suspended world. That's why I was feeling extremely embarrassed right now. Oh, my Rudra. Velgrind's joy was one of the reasons that was making Masayuki faint in agony. Stop it already. This is something I'm definitely going to get teased about later. Although he screamed this in his heart, it didn't reach anyone's heart. Isn't this the time to be flirting? You were so angry you were saying you were going to kill Kornu, but now it's like that never happened. That's not right, Masayuki thought. Well, Velgrind herself seemed indifferent, so Rudra's anger probably didn't last long, but even so, she left it too long. When Feldway and the others joined the battle, and seemed to have begun to persuade Cornu. He probably lost the will to fight, but Masayuki's opinion was that if that was the case, he should just settle the matter properly. The point is, stop being affectionate and clean up after yourself properly. That said, I can understand why Rudra lost interest in Cornu. Cornu is a bad person, but he's not a bad person either. No, he is a bad person, but he seems to have a very lack of common sense, and it was clear that this was due to poor education by Cornu's comrades, Feldway, and the others. It wouldn't be a bad person at heart, but it was more like he was a child getting cocky. His quick temper made him seem petty, which made him hard to hate. Well, in my case, I can't cause any trouble, so I can just watch from a safe distance like that. Even so, Masayuki thought he would wait and see. Cornu was so shocked that he was speechless, and just followed Benimaru and the others with his eyes. Cornu was unconscious for only a short time. Therefore, the moment he opened his eyes, Benimaru had already dealt the final blow to Jahil. Even Cornu couldn't understand why Jahil had been torn to pieces. He couldn't follow Benimaru's sword stroke with his eyes. No, seriously, what is he? Feldway thought, has he finally understood reality? Do you finally understand why we were admonishing you? Even to Feldway, Jahil was a hated enemy. Vega, whom Feldway had begun to trust, had come back to life, but was killed without even exchanging a word with him, although the only salvation was death. It was Jahil's doing that was the cause. If he had put off persuading Cornu and cooperated with Vega, perhaps his fate might have been different. However, to Feldway, Cornu was also an important ally. Until now, I've been a little too self-centered. A bit. Hey, stop romanticizing yourself in your mind. The outfielders Obra and Zalario were noisy, but Feldway completely ignored them. That's why, from now on, I swear to cherish my comrades. Mr. Feldway, will you follow me, Cornu? Of course. If you're okay with me, I'd be happy to. Feldway's persuasion was successful. Cornu put aside his grudge against Velgrind and the others and made peace with them. Or rather, he was also calculating the pros and cons of not obeying here, as he knew that Benimaru and the others would become his enemies, and so he was able to make the right decision. Obra and Zalario said nothing more, and just watched with lukewarm eyes. Image the scene, then returns to the site of the final battle. Veldonava was confused. Perhaps because of this, they are having difficulty analyzing the situation. That was inevitable, as just when he thought his beloved Lucia had returned to the Yellow Night, spring, Ivalage unfortunately resumed its activities. Moreover, Ivalage's target was Veldonava. No. Ivalage had set his sights on Lucia's soul, which Veldonava held dear. Ha 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 ha, love is wonderful. Let's become one, shall we? Then we'll be happy. Everyone will be happy. Ivalage was hideous. Although she has Lucia's appearance, her insides are horrifying and disgusting. No, it wasn't supposed to be like this. The Lucia I loved. Even if you gather all the pieces of Lucia together and knead them into one form, it's hard to call it the complete real thing. It was only at this point that Veldonava finally realized his mistake. How foolish, Velda, but I am the one who drove you mad. It was because I died that you were led astray. No, you did nothing wrong, Veldonava wanted to shout. He thought that it was his fault, not Lucia's. However, there was no time left for that. Ivalage was approaching very close. In Ivalage's hand was memory. In his place, Veldonava held kindness. Ivalage attacked Veldonava with his sword, as if trying to steal his love. They are killing and devouring, trying to become one again. That is by no means a bad thing. For Ivalage, this is an act of justice. For Veldonava, this was the providence of the world and the truth. The world is cruel, but it gives you everything. That is the world Veldonava created. Veldonava, the All-One, could no longer bear the loneliness. That was why he created the world to relieve his boredom. In the process, his younger siblings, who share the same origin as Veldonava, the dragon species, were born. With the number of dragon species, now at 4, the chaotic world stabilized. Order was restored. The 7 primordial angels were created to manage this. Laws were established in a stable world, and the Axis world became firmly established. Veldonava was no longer alone, but he still could not fill the void in his heart. The world was too immature to replace the omnipotence that he had thrown away. Veldonava waited patiently. The world is slowly changing. As indigenous gods were born as embodiments of great power, the ancestor of the gods, luminous Twilight Valentine, was born. With the appearance of the divine ancestor, the world underwent a revolution. Intelligent life forms were born from the life that filled the world. And then, after a long time, humanity was finally born, a being that could act freely, assert its will, and become a receptacle for the soul. Veldonava was overjoyed. For Veldonava, who was bored with the world of nothingness, just watching the activity of life was enjoyable. The activities of the living creatures known as humans were so moving that Veldonava even dreamed of becoming a part of that world. However, there was a problem. Humans who have acquired intelligence stimulate each other and behave in ways that are impossible to predict. If left unchecked, they will soon begin fighting each other and walking the path to self-destruction. Several worlds were born from the base world, but similar trends could be seen in all of them. It's because of emotions. Wisdom, desire, joy, anger, sorrow, and happiness were given to humans because they were thought to be necessary for greater human development. However,